Hi, my name is Melissa van Dijk, and in today's video we're going to look at why your sunscreen is pilling when you're applying it to your face. And I've picked random examples right here. I have two moisturizing sunscreens as well as also a fluid and a cream sunscreen. And those have also different formulations. And I also want to include a little demonstration so that you also can see why this may happen to you and also have a better understanding of figuring out where the problem is. Because when also experiencing pilling, most of the time, at least from my experience, it also occurs when using too much product. So depending also on what you're using before applying your sunscreen, doesn't matter if you just use your moisturizer or maybe have an entire skincare routine with toner and serums in between, then when using too much of them, it can also lead to pilling because the product may not be able to fully absorb into the skin. It kind of sits on top of the skin, and then when applying the next product on top, you're rubbing it off, and this is also where the pilling happens. Or it also may be because of different formulations, but again, this also leads a bit more towards my first point when using too much. Because if you're using the right amount so that your skin can also absorb it, you won't have any issues with the different formulations. And then on the other hand, it also depends on what product you're using. You may be able to also just move from one product to another because the formulation is great, it is able to absorb into the skin, then there's no need to wait. However, sometimes it also may be best to also give it a minute in between so that it's also able to absorb into the skin and then apply the next product on top. So those are all points that I do want to emphasize, and maybe now you can already think about how you're using your sunscreen, what else you're using when also applying it, so that you can figure out your issue. Because this is really important because it is quite annoying. And so therefore I also want to now split my face into 3 parts so that I can also give you like 3 different examples, as well as then also applying the sunscreen on top. So first of all, I want to go over an example where you have products that are well formulated, that are very thin in texture, have no troubles really to also absorb into the skin. They're basically doing it immediately. And then the pilling won't happen because there's nothing to rub off. And so I want to give you an example that if you want to use, for example, a toner like the one from Paula's Choice that I really like, this one is very thin in texture, and when not using too much of it, but also not too little, but the right amount, it is able to feel great on the skin and also can fully absorb into the skin. Now I'm going to do it on this part of my face, so I'm going to use less of each product, but please keep in mind it's more about the amount that's important when you're using it. So again, go ahead, if you want to include a toner that you're using beforehand, make sure to not use too much and also apply it evenly all over your face. I'm just going now over my cheek right here. And the way that it also should feel is not completely wet, just a bit damp, but you also should already feel that it's going to kind of absorb while also going over the areas, which is really important because then it also can save you time, but still also have used the right amount of it. So now, while I'm also talking, I'm just giving it a bit also, like make sure that it's absorbed into the skin. And then if you also want to include a serum, make sure that the serum also works for your skin. Not only for your skin concerns, but also that the formulation works for your skin. Sometimes you have serums that do not really fully absorb into the skin. That's quite annoying. Whereas with others, if they are well formulated and also have a great texture, such as also from Paula's Choice, those are great ones in my opinion, based on what I've tried so far. And those serums really soak well into the skin, where you can immediately move on to the next step without really waiting in between. And so I'm going to use the vitamin C booster from Paula's Choice. I'm just going to use about 1 drop because I'm just going to use it on my cheek. Going to use it in the palm of my hand. And then it also depends on the serum that you're using. Sometimes certain serums do better when just patting it into the skin, whereas others you can also really blend into the skin. This depends on the formulation, which you also will figure out while using it. So for example, with the Paula's Choice serums, because they are well formulated, I can either pat them into the skin without any issues, like really pressing the serum into the skin, or I also can go ahead and evenly blend it over my face. That's also not a problem. So this is really specific depending also on what serum you're using, which you can also figure out over time the more often you're using it. But now I just use 1 drop for that part right here, which is enough for me, and it already feels dry. There's nothing left on top of the skin, it fully has absorbed into the skin, and this is also what's important, because now when I'm going ahead and I'm going to apply my sunscreen on top, which is also a fluid, again very thin in texture and also works well as just an example, it also won't happen, because the products that you used previously are able to sink into the skin, plus the sunscreen that you're also now going to lay on top, and if you're going to blend it all over your face, neck, ears, etc., then it also won't happen, like the pilling won't happen, because there's nothing left on top of your skin that you can rub off when applying your sunscreen. And so I'm just going to use a bit, not too much, because I'm just going to use it on my cheek, but so that you still can also see, now that I'm blending it also on top of my skin, where I use the toner and serum, there's no pilling, nothing. And I can blend it evenly because I use the right amount of products beforehand, and then when applying the sunscreen on top, nothing happens. So there's no pilling, there are no like annoying bits that are left on my skin, which like looks like when it's going to pill. But in that specific case, using the right amount, having products that also work well for your skin is really important. And I now also use the La Roche-Posay Invisible Fluid, which is very thin in texture. I could have done the same with also a cream, or if you feel the need of using a moisturizer, when using a moisturizer, just make sure to not use too much of it, and then layer the sunscreen on top, which is now also going to be another example that I want to share with you. But here I have on one side the example that you can also leave out your moisturizer, depending also on your skin type, on your skin needs, and also what sunscreen that you're using. For example, I now use the fluid, which is very thin and light. However, if you have really dry or dehydrated skin, you may want to work with a moisturizing sunscreen, either a moisturizer with SPF or a moisturizing sunscreen like the Ulta MD. And then you could also use that one on top without an issue, as long as you're making sure to not use too much of your previous products. Now I want to go over another example where the pilling may also be a bit more obvious. This also depends again on the formulation, how much you're going to use and how well it sinks into the skin. And this is also starting off with the serum again. Instead of the toner, I'm going to immediately start off with the ordinary hyaluronic acid. Now that's a great serum, that's also a very famous serum, but when using too much of it, it kind of like sits on top of the skin, and then when layering the next product on top, you're going to have a mess, because this is where the pilling can occur. So with serums where you had already previous troubles with it, such as pilling, then you may also want to reduce the amount of product that you're using. So usually with the ordinary serums, I recommend using about 2 to 3 drops for the entire face. You may be able to use 1 drop more depending also on the size of your face, but what's really important is do not use half a pipette or an entire pipette for your entire face. This is going to be too much because your skin isn't able to absorb it. And that's also one that where I used to have problems with it because I was using too much of it. So therefore I know that also with certain serums, I know that I can use a certain amount without having any problems, whereas with others I have to be careful to not to use too much. This is also a point where you have to get to know your skincare products and also what works well for your skin. And so now on the other cheek, I'm going to use hyaluronic acid. Since that one is quite sticky, I'm going to stick also with 1 drop. And for example, with the ordinary serums, I recommend patting it into the skin, because also depends also on the amount that you're using and also what your skin really needs. If you're going to blend it into the skin, you can already experience the pilling while you're just applying it. So therefore, in that specific case, when using like serums that feel similar to the ordinary serums, water-based serums, I recommend patting. With the Paula's Choice ones, patting, blending it into the skin does not matter because the formulation is very well, it works well, doesn't matter how you're going to apply it to your face. But with the ordinary ones, please pat it into the skin. Again, get to know your skincare products to see what works well for you and also how the product basically also works. And so when applying it to the face, make sure that you're not using too much. With the ordinary hyaluronic acid, this one is a sticky serum. Most hyaluronic acid serums, like also the one from Inkey's List or like La Roche-Posay, when applying them, when using too much of them, they can become very, very sticky. So reduce the amount of it, which is really important, generally speaking, with hyaluronic acid. Because when applying it, make sure that it kind of feels dry. It's not sticky at all. It's like I haven't applied anything. That's kind of what it feels right now. But that's kind of the sign that you want to get, because then you're making sure that there's no layer on top of it. And now I'm going ahead and I'm going to use a moisturizer on top. Now I'm going to use the CeraVe Moisturizing Cream. Again, I'm just using it on one part of my face, therefore I'm going to use just the tiniest amount of it. But usually with moisturizers in general, I recommend using about a pea-size amount. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, see what works like for you, but make sure to not use too much. If you're using such a thick layer of your moisturizer and it's already a moisturizer that's not really sinking in but kind of like seals everything, then when applying your sunscreen on top, you will end up with pilling. You will end up with an uncomfortable and like very like strange feeling on your face. So therefore, use not too much. When using a moisturizer, there's not much needed, because all what it should do is kind of act like a protection layer over your face, but at the same time also keep the ingredients like in your skin. So therefore, when using a moisturizer, I'm just going to use the tiniest amount, like so, and I'm going to apply it on top of it. Now again, I used the ordinary hyaluronic acid beforehand, which is also a troublemaker when getting the pilling. This is where it mostly happens. But when using the right amount of your serum and when using also the right amount of your moisturizer, nothing happens. No pilling. So really the amount of product you're using is important. And so this is really important when also selecting your products. Again, make sure not to use too much. Now I'm going ahead, since I have already applied my moisturizer, I'm not going to use a moisturizing sunscreen, that's for my last part, but I'm going to use the Nivea sunscreen, which is kind of like a normal sunscreen. It's a cream texture and it also protects the skin. There is nothing marketed like that it's a moisturizing sunscreen. It's not really thin in texture. So therefore, when also using a sunscreen like this and you're using also a moisturizer beforehand, make sure to not use too much of your moisturizer. This can feel kind of like uncomfortable. So therefore, when applying your sunscreen, I'm just going to blend it into the skin. I mean, you can see that I'm really blending it into the skin. So there's no pilling, nothing. It actually feels really, really nice when I'm combining it like this. So this is also on one way on how you can do it. When including a moisturizer in between, let's say you're going to use a sunscreen like the one from La Roche-Posay or just the one from Nivea, which do not really market the term moisturizer on top, then you also may feel the need to use a moisturizer in between. Depends also on your skin type as well as also on your skin needs. But when using a moisturizer underneath, make sure that you're not going to use too much. The layer doesn't have to be such a thick moisturizing layer. Keep it simple. It just needs to be a slightly like thin protecting layer. That's basically it. And then when applying the sunscreen on top, it just feels great. No pilling, nothing that's weird, nothing that's uncomfortable. It actually feels good, moisturizing, and also very light at the same time, which can also be a big issue depending also on how much, again, you're going to use. Now another way on, depending also on what are your skin concerns, depending also on your skincare routine in general, if you want to keep it simple and you're that type of person that just cleanses the face, uses moisturizer, done. So, and when also using your sunscreen, or you now want to start off using your sunscreen, maybe because you want to protect your skin from aging, wearing it inside, outside, doesn't matter, or if you're just going to use it when being exposed to the sun, keep it simple. if you're used to having a cleanser that moisturizes your face, if you're having trouble with your moisturizer and using a separate sunscreen on top, you may just want to use a moisturizing sunscreen instead, which can solve the problem, because then instead of using 2 products, you're just using 1 product, because you have the moisturizer and sunscreen included. And there are different types of sunscreens like this on the market. You have certain moisturizers that have SPF in it, like one from Paula's Choice, or like the Ultra MD, which also is marketed as a moisturizing sunscreen. So if you have dry or dehydrated skin, you may want to look for sunscreens that also include moisturizing ingredients in it, so that you basically can skip your moisturizer in the morning that you usually would use and just replace it with a moisturizing sunscreen. And I'm going to use the Ultra MD because that one is also a great sunscreen, and it also protects your skin as well as moisturizes your skin. Again, I'm not going to use too much because I'm just going to use it on my forehead only. So I just have washed my face. You now also would use your moisturizer and sunscreen instead. And then start blending it into the skin. And this way you're having everything together. You're saving a step. Plus you're also making sure that you're also not coming across the pilling issue. Now, of course, if you're that type of person that just prefers to also use if you're that type of person that usually has oily skin, you're not using a moisturizer at all, but you just want to protect your skin, you also could go ahead and instead just use like a fluid sunscreen or mattifying sunscreen instead. So this is really individual. There are so many sunscreens on the market that have mattifying finishes that are very shiny, that also you have the mineral sunscreens, you also have the chemical sunscreens. So the sunscreen you're choosing depends also on your skincare routine in general, if you want to keep it simple, if you also want to use more than 1 product in between, and also what your skin really needs. Because now, for example, I have applied a moisturizing sunscreen in my T-zone, which usually also gets a bit more oily. I look very shiny on my forehead, but it still feels great on the skin. It's not too heavy, it's not too light, it still also feels comfortable. So selecting the right sunscreen also for your needs, as well as what you also like feeling-wise, is really important. If you are having a sunscreen at home that does not feel great on the skin, you're not going to use it. So therefore, selecting the right one for your needs is really important, and then you also can protect your skin during the day. And so this is basically what I wanted to share with you. Doesn't matter how simple or how advanced you are using certain products, the amount of product you're going to use is important. Make sure to choose products that your skin needs, that your skin likes, so that they also can absorb into the skin. If that's not going to be the case, you can experience pilling. And then when selecting your sunscreen, depending also on the way you want to use your sunscreen, if you want to use it all day long, doesn't matter if you're inside, outside, then you may want to select a sunscreen that may fit a little bit more towards the way you want to use your sunscreen. Have a comfortable feeling so that you can also wear it during the day, that you not have the feeling to also wash it off immediately. So please make sure to select the right products for your needs, and then you also won't come across the pilling issue. Now, I do also hope that with the little demonstrations as well as tips that I could give you, you are now able to look at your skin, the moisturizers, sunscreens, or other products that you have at home, and basically also break it down. What about my serums? Do they fit my skin? What do they do for my skin? Do I really need it? Do I really need to use a moisturizer in between? What's my skin types? What are my skin needs? And then also the sunscreen I'm using. Is it the right one for what I'm also wanted to use the sunscreen? So those are all aspects that you have to take care of and also have in mind, and based on that adjust it. And this is also what I wanted to share with you. If you like this video, please also don't forget to give it a thumbs up as well as share it. And thank you so much for watching and listening to me. And I hope that I could help you out. And yeah, I will see you soon in the next one. Happy skin caring. Bye.